The problem with fearing risk. Once Dale's children had all graduated from college, he wanted to do more exciting things with his life. When he thought about opening a business, however, he felt like he'd be jumping off a cliff without a safety harness. What Dale didn't calculate was the emotional toll that avoiding risk was having on him. Not following his dream affected his mood because it changed the way he thought about himself and the way he felt about his teaching job. You don't get to be extraordinary without taking calculated risks. Othmar Ammann was a Swiss-born engineer who immigrated to the United States. He started out as the chief engineer to the Port Authority of New York, and within 7 years, they promoted him to director of engineering. By all accounts, he had an important job. But for as long as he could remember, Ammann had dreamed of becoming an architect. So he left his coveted job and set out to open his own business. In the years that followed, Ammann contributed to some of the most impressive American bridges, including the Verrazano Narrows, the Delaware Memorial, and the Walt Whitman. His ability to design and create ornate, complicated, and extravagant structures earned him multiple awards. Most impressive of all might be that Ammann was 60 years old when he switched careers. He continued to create architectural masterpieces right up until he was 86. At an age when most people don't want to take any more risks, Ammann chose to take a calculated risk that allowed him to live his dream. If we only take risks that make us the most comfortable, we're likely missing out on some great opportunities. Taking calculated risks often mean the difference between living a mediocre life and living an extraordinary life. Emotion interferes with making logical choices. You should have some fear about stepping into traffic. That fear reminds you that you should look both ways before you cross the road, so you can reduce the risk that you'll get hit by a car. If you didn't have any fear, you'd likely behave recklessly. But our fear meters aren't always reliable. They sometimes go off even when we're not in any actual danger. And when we feel afraid, we tend to behave accordingly, falsely believing if it feels scary, it must be too risky. For years, we've been warned against the dangers of anything from killer bees to mad cow disease. It seems like we're constantly hearing various statistics, research studies, and warnings about so many perils that it becomes difficult to decipher the extent of danger we actually face in our lives. Take the research about cancer, for example. Some studies estimate cancer accounts for nearly 1 of every 4 deaths, and other reports warn that within a few years about half of us will have cancer. Although those types of statistics can be a cause for alarm, they can often be misleading. A closer look at the numbers reveals a young healthy person who maintains a healthy lifestyle has a relatively low risk of developing cancer compared to an older, overweight person who smokes. But sometimes it's hard to put our personal level of risk into perspective when we're constantly bombarded with such frightening statistics. Manufacturers of cleaning solutions have worked hard to convince us we need powerful chemicals, hand sanitizers, and antibacterial soaps to protect ourselves from germs. Media stories warn us that our kitchen countertops have more germs than our toilet seats, as we're given visual reminders of how fast bacteria grows in a petri dish. Germaphobic people heed these warnings by taking drastic precautions to combat the risk of coming into contact with germs. They sanitize their homes daily with caustic chemicals, scrub their hands repeatedly with antibacterial products, and replace handshakes with fist bumps to reduce the spread of germs. But attempts to win the war on germs may actually do more harm than good. In fact, there's research that shows getting rid of too many germs reduces our ability to build immunity from illness. A study from Johns Hopkins Children's Center found that newborns who were exposed to germs, pet, and rodent dander, and roach allergens were less likely to develop asthma and allergies. Fear leads many people to incorrectly assume that germs pose a much higher risk than they actually do, because in the reality, bacteria-free environments may pose a greater threat to our health than the germs. It's important to be aware of your emotions throughout the decision-making process. If you're feeling sad, you're likely to anticipate failure and avoid the risk. If you're feeling happy, you may disregard the risk and forge ahead. There's even research that shows that fear of something completely unrelated to the risk can influence your decision. If you're stressed about your job, and you're also considering purchasing a new home, you'll be more likely to view that home purchase as a bigger risk than if you weren't feeling stressed at work. Often, we're not good at separating what factors are influencing our feelings, so we lump them all together. Calculate risks and reduce fear. It had never before occurred to Dale that he didn't have to dive into a business headfirst. Once he began identifying ways to reduce the chances that he'd go bankrupt, he felt relieved and was able to think more logically about how he could turn his business into a reality. Clearly, there was a chance that he may not ever earn back the money he invested in starting the business, but after thinking it through, that was a calculated risk he was willing to accept.